The state government's industrial strife has deepened. In a week, it's celebrating 1 year in power. The coalition's taken 2 unions to the industrial umpire, Fair Work Australia, claiming nurses and child protection workers are endangering lives by closing beds and refusing to take on new cases. On top of those battles, Victorian teachers are vowing to fight hard for their own significant pay rise. Anna McDonald explores the increasingly fraught industrial landscape in Victoria.
There is no respect.
First, the nurses. Now public servants are the target of the state government's tough line that industrial action is putting public safety at risk.
We've now been alerted to about 1,052 cases of potential abuse of children that we have not been able to assess.
We will not accept second-rate wage increases. We will not accept a cost of living cut to our wages and our take-home pay.
The bans by 1,500 child protection workers that have resulted in some cases being referred to the Secretary of the Department of Human Services risk derailing the industrial campaign being run by the state's 35,000 public servants. The government has used a provision in the Fair Work Act that allows those on the same agreement to be affected, even if just a small group is found to be causing harm.
There's 40,000 public sector workers, 10,000 of them are CPSU members. 5,900 of them voted in favour of union action. So we're talking about a very small number. We're not talking about the whole public sector workforce here.
The union's been trying to show that those who work in the child protection system are overworked and underpaid.
They believe that they have been undermined, that the government is trying to pick winners, and as a result they feel that they have been treated as second-class people contributing to the state's operation.
The government won its argument with nurses 2 days ago, with Fair Work Australia ordering them to reopen 900 beds. But nurses defied the order, despite the risk of being fined.
In a sporting context where somebody is not obeying the umpire might have the ability to red card them and make it clear that they cannot continue to defy the rules.
I have already had a number of cheques provided, sent into the mail into our office yesterday by members of the community. I have got a large number of emails. They're around our reception area. Our phones run hot.
But it's just the beginning, with 45,000 state government teachers also in line for a pay rise.
We're disappointed that we look like we're facing more of a Kennett mentality towards the profession under a Baillieu government right now.
The coalition spent much of the year in battle with the unions. Unfortunately for the government, 2011 saw a number of key enterprise bargaining agreements expire. The Premier has continued to offer an increase less than inflation.
We have committed to a 2.5% rise plus productivity, and we're very mindful of that.
But the powerful police union brokered a better deal, setting the benchmark for other unions. The state's 12,000 police officers will get an increase of around 19% over 4 years. The government won't detail what bankable productivity gains have been promised by police, but it says the deal will bring the most significant reforms to Victoria policing in a generation, including rostering improvements and more efficient recruitment and retention practices.
There's very, very little in the way of productivity. There are some service improvements, but certainly not bankable dollars to offset that 4.9% per annum pay increase. And I think that the public sector across the board would expect the same sort of deal. Why should a nurse get less than a police person when the offer has been made?
The Baillieu government's May budget focused on meeting its election promises. But to do that, it doubled debt and promised to make big savings through administrative cuts, with health and education most affected.
There is no fat to be had. Productivity could only mean cutting teacher or support staff numbers.
They've got to look for broad-ranging types of savings to meet their commitment to balancing the books. And given, if you like, that small movements in wage increases for large groups like teachers or nurses and police, firefighters, can have very large consequences for their budget bottom line. They'll be very concerned about how they can restrain, if you like, those pressures that come out of wage movements.
Peter Gahan worked for the Bracks government in its negotiations with unions. He says the government is using the new Fair Work Act to test just how far it can push the unions.
I'll be looking to Fair Work Australia to, if you like, sort of set the terms of the relationship. I think they will be expecting Fair Work Australia to come down with decisions which are more favourable to them. So the flow of these types of things in part will be dependent on whether those expectations are met.
Any outcome will determine how teachers decide to wage their campaign for better pay. Their EBA expires at the end of the year, and the government's pre-election pledge of making Victorian teachers the best paid in the country hasn't been forgotten.
Instead of the honest Ted, who was someone who would honour his promises, he's in jeopardy of being remembered simply for a premier that cut core business in our public schools. We've seen the police get, and they deserve every bit of their 4.99%. Now that's the benchmark we want to achieve.
You are as important as Victorian police officers. We commend them for their increase, but you also deserve the same.
This Stop Work meeting at a youth justice centre in Malmesbury is just one of dozens of protected actions organised by the Public Sector Union. Their industrial campaign is being felt across the state, with the union representing 400 professions.
Is 2.5 enough? No! Is 2.5 enough? No!
The stoush with the unions is a key turning point for the Baillieu government. This week marks 1 year since the coalition took office, and apart from the Victoria police crisis, it's been a fairly quiet 12 months. It's now anything but, with those who provide the most important of public services vowing to continue their fight.
We don't want to be losers in all of this.
We are prepared to take the long haul on this particular campaign. The government needs to understand that it's not just the union bureaucrats making the comment, it's real people in the workplace feeling very frustrated.
Bullying nurses into submission will only drive the parties further apart and make it more difficult to reach a resolution.